Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dexter.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Then
Welcome.
the small walk. Can I please ask our fellow panelists to come in? I'll stand up because I think we've got a full house. Yeah, it's going to make it easier.
What a chair.
There's five of you, so I think there's five
Varane,
chairs
nice to
and
meet you
I'm
too.
standing, which is fine.
That's fine.
So welcome everyone while everybody is kind of sitting down. Welcome to our panel on digital transformation. We started, how it's going. So I think digital transformation has been very big in the last 3 years. Strong acceleration. I think the main change for me is that it's gone from if we're going to do digital transformation to when are we going to do digital transformation. And obviously Satya Nadella made a famous quote very early in the pandemic. We've seen 2 years worth of DT in the last 2 months. And I think a lot of companies have said that. So it's here to stay. Every company will need to do it, but it's still difficult, complicated, complex, and expensive. So this is why we've got 5 very distinguished panelists that are going to help me out answer those questions. So I'm going to try to do it in the right order. I apologize if I'm wrong. So straight on my right, Nadine Thompson from Group M. Then we've got Chris Blatchford from Kingfisher.
Hello.
Then we've got Eric Nicolas from Feminish. Then we've got Rahul Patel from Qualcomm, and last but not least, we've got Igdev Singh for Mars Petcare.
Hello.
So welcome everyone. I'm going to start with a very, very quick question, 60 seconds each. I've got the timer, so I'm going to cut you off. We're talking about how COVID has accelerated our change in transformation. So if you want to give maybe a 60-second answer explaining what it has done specifically, we'll start with Nadine.
Right. So I think digital transformation's changed 3 areas. So first of all, in the kind of product set. So I work in media, so advertising. Group M's a media investment company. We have seen a huge growth in e-commerce, and not just in the traditional organisations, but direct to consumer in many industries that perhaps didn't do e-commerce in the past. So I think that's one change. Second change, I would say, is internal working practices. I'm talking quickly to get my 60 seconds in. So internal working practices, something we do now is virtual pitching. So when we're kind of selling to clients, it's done online, it's done on video, and that's been a very different working practice and different way of crafting chemistry in a room than perhaps we would have done face to face. And the third thing is a change in advertising. So one of the things we did during COVID, we worked with Walgreens to deliver COVID vaccinations, and using data and AI, we delivered 30 million COVID vaccinations across the US, building brand and getting people to appointments. There's my brief answer.
Very well.
Thank you.
I think you were 65, but I'll let you off. Chris, what about you at Kingfisher?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think 2 things come to mind initially. One, COVID focused Kingfisher, focused the business on what's important and the true value that we could focus on from a massive, gargantuan portfolio of activity. At one point, we were physically moving desks outside of Screwfix to make sure we could continue with the click and collect orders online. So the amount of innovation and the amount we had to adapt to the new ways of working was significant. And then secondly, I think very similar in many ways to Nadine's comments, internally we had to change the way we worked. So we obviously moved to a virtual world. We all know this accelerated the virtual ways of working massively. There's a paradigm shift in how people worked. An interesting side effects of that was it accelerated our sustainability movement as well, because we learned very quickly that actually having a blurred background on things like Teams or Zoom or a background picture increases processing power, increases your carbon output. So all sorts of strange insights started to come out of this new way of working. There are 2 things that come to mind.
Very interesting. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, the operating model of our company is to co-create with clients in our labs, on their labs, the perfumes and flavor we make for them. So we had to invent a new way of interacting with the clients on briefs without having them smelling or testing. That was an interesting challenge. But we had the AI technology prior to this difficult moment, and we were able to do it by 90% of the time.
That's cool.
I did it in 20 seconds, you can measure.
Yeah, I'll give you an extra 20 seconds later on, maybe. Rahul, what about you with Qualcomm?
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Qualcomm, I think we are in our view, we are on a journey of digital transformation. This is probably big step forward. COVID definitely accelerated the world in that direction. If I have to, define what digital transformation is at a higher level of abstraction, you look at the generation before internet, after internet, within the generation of internet. You look at accessibility. You look at what wireless communications effectively did to the internet. Ultimately, all of us over here and at home, through COVID, came to realize we can work from home, we can play from home, we can entertain from home, and more importantly, school from home as well, right? And that is what digital transformation is. It is still a journey, and it is a journey that has got a lot more to do, largely because 40% of the world has not been made accessible to broadband communications. We are evolving to a cloud-based economy, and without that accessibility to rest of the world, which is 40% of the world, which is about 3 billion people, we have a lot more work to do on this journey of digital transformation. As Qualcomm, we are really excited about how far we have come along, and we are really excited about what more we have to accomplish.
Yes. And finally, Deep, what does that mean for you?
All right. Well, so first and foremost, I'm representing Mars. Most people know Mars as a candy company, so the chocolate company. But actually, it's lesser known fact that actually we are mainly a pet care company. So we employ about 100,000 people in the pet business, about 70,000 people who are veterinarians and service providers. So all the hospitals you see for pet care, actually, we are one of the biggest owners. And the second part of the business actually is a big pet food business. So in the COVID pandemic, a lot of us were staying at home, and suddenly we all wanted to become pet parents. So a lot of you probably adopted a lot of pets. So basically what that did was there was a huge surge in demand in the markets. A lot of pets were, a lot of you were staying at home and giving your pets more treats. So the demand for treats went up. A lot of people wanted to give them more supplements and more food. They wanted to visit doctors more. So actually we saw an increase in 3 places. One was with doctors, there was a need for more virtual consultations. So historically, you would go to a hospital, you actually wanted to do that virtually. So we saw a 960% increase. We started doing 500,000 virtual calls through veterinary doctors. So there was a big change in that. The second one really was that in our supply chain, we actually saw a big, there wasn't enough labor available to go to the factories. So we had to really digitize and also automate a lot of the processes. So there was a big shift in that, and we spent a lot of money on that. And third piece, as you mentioned, Nadine, there was a big surge in DCOM, or digital commerce. A lot of people actually were buying things online, and with that, we had to change our entire demand model and how we actually even service that to the retailers. So we spent close to about $1 billion in the last 3 years on just digitizing to adapt to that.
So yes, I mean, quite a lot has happened, as you can tell, in the last 3 years, and quite a lot has been accelerated. So we're lucky to have 5 people from 5 different sectors, 5 different perspectives. And I guess for my next question, I'm going to start with Raul, because you obviously, Qualcomm being a tech company, has a slightly different perspective. You already touched on it, but if you want to maybe go a bit deeper in terms of what does digital transformation mean for you in terms of Qualcomm, in terms of how you're helping your client? What does it mean exactly? And then I'll go back with the rest of the panel for their own experience.
And that's an excellent question. From Qualcomm perspective, I'll again give you some stats. I won't go into the technical jargon, but the stats are staggering. Today, at home, at work, you all interact over Wi-Fi. There are 18 to 20 billion Wi-Fi radios active at this moment in time on planet Earth. 18 to 20 billion. Put in perspective, we are give or take some 7.5 billion people. I earlier said 40% of our population is not connected. So about 4.5 billion people consuming about 18 to 20 billion Wi-Fi radios at this femtosecond. That's about 4 to 4.5 Wi-Fi radios per person. In a family of 4, you are over 15. In the United States, an average home has 22 Wi-Fi radios. It's not just the phones, it's just not the laptops, it's just not the TV screens. It's also your security cameras, it's your doorbells, your washer, dryer, and whatnot more is going to come into your home. So that is what we are looking at. You look at this world, everybody's got a very high appetite for consumption of internet over wireless communications. That is the huge opportunity for Qualcomm. We've got a very limited spectrum to work with. We went from a home pre-COVID on an average having in the United States less than 10 radios to now 22 radios. Our anticipation is in the next 4 to 5 years, that number is going to evolve to 45 radios per home in the United States. And I'm sure very similar trajectory in majority of the Western world. So long story short, the opportunity over here is twofold. One, how do we work to optimize and deliver the best of the untethered experience of the cloud economy that every one of us has come to expect and has a strong appetite for on a going forward basis. That's the huge opportunity for us on this journey of digital transformation. Number two, let's make sure we don't leave people behind in this journey. That 40% of the world that is not connected over broadband, that does not have the CapEx equations in those geographies to deploy fiber, let's try to connect them over wireless broadband. And that's where the opportunities are for companies like Qualcomm.
Yeah, I think what you mean, basically, we're still very early in that journey, and
Yes.
there's still a lot to do to make sure that everybody can take advantage. Igdeep, what does digital transformation mean for you, and what does it change?
Well, it's less profound, I would say. It's
I asked for different questions.
it's to us, it's a little bit more about, just make your brands more relatable. The consumers are shifting, and the consumers are much more digital. All of you are much more digital. You're interacting with brands on a digital basis, and brands need to be there, right? So that's the first way of simplifying it, be it digital channels or be it digital media, right? The second piece is just become more efficient. And actually, digitization is a big source of efficiency and productivity. And that's the way I look at it.
Eric, you've got an extra 20 seconds.
Well, maybe I might use a bit more this time.
That's fine.
At the beginning, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what would be our priorities in this digital transformation. Because, of course, everybody had a very precise idea of what we should be doing from the technological standpoint, the direction standpoint. And as 20 people had different ideas, we had to define priorities. And we ended up in deciding that we should refer back to our fundamentals. And our fundamentals was very, very much upstream innovation and research, because we are a research-based company, the product innovation for our clients, client intimacy, understanding exactly their needs, and at the very end of the spectrum, the supply chain agility. So we decided that we should have 4 priorities in the digital transformation. And we discussed a lot, and we gave up very early on the view that we should push the transformation through the technology. We have made the mistakes first to say, well, let's use this technology and this one. And we ended up making some mistakes. And finally, we decided what we should push through the value chain of the company. So the very first thing we decided to go after is how do we allow our creative people, the master perfumers, the flavorists, how do we push them using new technologies to better create, to be spot on the needs of our clients. And that was a true psychological revolution, because when you're a master perfumer, you're a star. And when you have been successful for so many years, it's difficult to accept to go with an AI-supported creation process. The same way on the research side, we decided to push for technology allowing us to invent new molecules, because the molecule creates ingredients, ingredients goes with the creation, so that was as well a big challenge. We as well went through the end-to-end process to find new routes to market, and this is what you evoked to when it's about the COVID as period as well. And at the end of the day, in the supply chain agility, we went through a big innovation in developing what we call a digital twin, so the modelization of the complexity of the supply chain. In our business, we have many products for only one client, and I think you're one of our clients, maybe not in pet food so far, but coming. And because you have one product is unique to each need of each client, you have thousands of products, you have more than raw material, and you have a lot of location to produce and to transform. So the digital twin in supply chain, making it agile, was a big challenge Just for reference, to develop, to produce a new ingredient, it takes any time between 8 and 18 months. But the needs of the clients take more like 8 days to 8 weeks max. So how do you make this agility supported by a digital twin was one of the key challenges we had. These were the priorities, and that was 6 years ago, I would say. And of course, we made our mistakes, we have learned, and we have started again, and we are not in a bad shape today.
Very good. Chris, what about you at Kingfisher?
Thanks, Eric. I have to try and stop.
It was 45 seconds. So
Yeah,
we can-
jeez. So there's a few things I jotted down, I think. When Raoul, you were speaking about radio frequencies, it reminded me of electromagnetic fields, so bear with me, and non-ionizing radiation. So the local council where I live has decided to put a 5G mast up outside the school. So you can imagine the reaction from the parents. This is terrible. We're going to end up with super children or all sorts of other mutations.
You did transformation.
Digital, yeah, transformation, exactly, right? And so I've spent a couple of months researching, looking at EMF, looking at the safe levels of non-ionizing radiation, and being objective, being data-driven, looking at the academic research and determining actually there's no evidence right now for negative consequences from 5G. Doesn't mean in the future there won't necessarily be so, but it's been about education. So I've had to spend a lot of time educating my kids' parents, who are largely, a large generation of them who are younger, are the TikTok generation, or the Facebook generation for us boomers. And so it's not necessarily data-driven. And so a lot of transformation, see what I sort of,
Yeah.
is about education, but you can't be arrogant with it. I work for Kingfisher. Kingfisher is full of veteran retailers, very successful veteran retailers. They don't necessarily understand technology. If I turn up and start talking about tribes, recommender engines, digital enabled sales, retail media, marketplaces, they won't know what I'm talking about because I'm not using the vocabulary that they're used to. So you have to meet them in the middle. What's the vocabulary? What's the taxonomy that you're going to develop together to have the conversation? Otherwise, Thierry, my boss, the CEO, just not interested. So learn the language. And then I think the other piece, just very quickly, is being a technologist, when it comes to digital transformation and technology, two-way doors. So if you're going to make a decision on a piece of tech or a new way of working, if you want to move to a product-led mindset away from waterfall, make sure it's a two-way door. So from a technology perspective, we build things in a composable way. So we can swap things out. If it's the wrong technology, we make sure we've got a two-way door, we can rip it out. It's going to be cost, but you're not going to be stuck with another arts technology group, ATG stack that lasts for the next 10 years. And so they're the two big ones, or maybe 10 different things that we're focusing on at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, basically I think what I get from your answer is that digital transformation is not only about technology, but how you use it. You can have the technology.
Technology's tiny.
Yeah, it's how
Tiny.
you use it.
Yep.
Nadine, what about you? What does digital transformation mean for you?
Yeah, I'm going to build on your point actually. So I think when it comes to digital transformation, first of all, just defining it. For me, it's using technology to sort of change either your internal working practices or your product or how you interact with customers. And I can give you some cool examples of some stuff we're doing with AI and ChatGPT. Had to get in there with advertising. But I think before I go there, just thinking about the people side of things. Think anyone who's worked with technology and introducing that to an organization knows that actually it doesn't matter what technology you choose, but it matters how you introduce it and how you get people kind of aligned on that journey, and the storytelling and the narrative around why you're doing it and getting their hearts and minds bought in. And that's what kind of struck me when you were talking about your business and the veterans in your business and kind of how they need to be spoken to and what they need to hear to really buy into that change. So I think for me, digital transformation is almost change management throughout an organization. Change management is super tough. It's all about people and very little about technology. Now, if I'm going to talk a little bit about cool technology, because it is digital transformation, I say one of the things that we're doing, which is kind of a bit more on the fun, cool side of digital transformation. We actually work with Mars Pet Care, and we've done some cool stuff actually on out of home. So billboards where they identify, they use sensors to identify the dogs and change the kind of advertising of which which dog food we'd be advertising to that particular pet owner. So that's quite cool. But also, just in thinking about generative AI, so we're seeing a boom in AI at the moment through that accessibility that ChatGPT has given to the general consumer. We're using that kind of in the creative process for efficiencies and just for new ideas. I mean, creating an ad where you don't have to sit and draw a cloud, but you can say to the AI, put a cloud in the sky, is, it just saves loads of time and also comes up with new ideas as well. So, yeah, that's my two thoughts on digital transformation.
That's very good. And thank you for your example. Thank you for talking about ChatGPT. Spot was a big
Yeah,
idea,
I
so
should
just tick that off. Well, no, it's good because so we've kind of moved from me going too deep, which happens from time to time. We're going to get very, very shallow now because I'm going to ask you from, I guess, specific example of what you've done in terms of obviously things you can share, but example of what you've done in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, you've already kind of touched on it in terms of things you've introduced that has kind of had a strong return on investment while they're starting to have a strong return on investment because obviously those things take time. So Chris, maybe do you have an example for us to highlight what Kingfisher has done?
Yes, I do. And I've been with Kingfisher for a year, so I can still be an agitator, which is quite good. I'm not quite in my honeymoon period anymore, but still. So one of the things we've done recently is, last week I was in Waldorf at the SAP campus, which I'm sure many of you have been to and visited. An epic, huge 50 building plus. It's not important how many buildings there are. I'm not sure where I'm going with that. But the point is, I was visiting SAP, and they've got a strategic partnership with GCP, Google, in hosting SAP in the Google Cloud. Before that, I was visiting AWS, and we're in all the public clouds. We love public cloud. We're also in our own data centers. Visiting each of these vendors, we've leveraged them for different reasons. So Google, we used them late last year to help us on our transformation journey. So we used their offices in London, and we used the power of Google, their thinking, the mindsets they've got, the way they approach engineering, the way they approach change, and we used them to tell us, well, okay, you want to move to a more product-led mindset. What does that mean? Well, that's about reducing handoffs, really. What else is it? Well, it's about getting as close as you can to the customer. Okay, what else is it? And so they gave us these ideas, and we absorbed them. We adopted them into our own transformation plans. We talked to AWS about how we optimize our estate. They gave us about £1 million in optimizations. We talked to SAP about their core competency and DataSphere and the proposition they have there. We're talking to Microsoft about ChatGPT and how we could use bots in call centers to help augment the call centers' capabilities. AI won't replace people, but people using AI will replace people that don't. And so the point is, I guess, we use our vendors, our partners, for an outside-in view on what digital transformation means, because we can't do it all ourselves. We've got a view, we have a perspective and a set of hypotheses, but let's leverage, at least we think, let's leverage our partners and the brain sets they've got, the hive mind, to give us a view of how they think change should be made.
Very interesting. Eric, I know you've done a few things, like your Love for Daughter journey and also your big data project called Geranium, so maybe you want to discuss that a little bit?
Geranium maybe is already outdated if you
Okay.
allow me.
Do another one.
That was yesterday, so today is a different topic. 2 examples, if you allow me. You said a few minutes.
Two
let's
is
do
fine,
two
yeah.
at the extreme spectrum. We buy a lot of vanilla, mint, cardamom, and name them in the field. And as we go to traceability, as you know, the first mile is always the most challenging part of it. So we have progressively put today, last count yesterday actually, not today, I have to admit, 8,000 farmers using an app and a phone, just to making sure that not only we understand the origin of the crop, but the social conditions of the harvest and the work. No labor child, of course, right price and everything. So that's one spectrum, and of course we have that. So when a client asks the origin of the product, we know exactly where they come from. The second, maybe at the other extreme, we developed a tool with a GAN technology. Again, the generative something network. Why that? Because we all know here that the GAN is like 2 software talking to each other. And for creation, you have one software proposing a perfume formula the other one appraising and giving a feedback to the first one. And you have a convergent back and forth process. Why did we put that in place? But actually, this is a normal process for the creation of a flavor and a perfume. You have one perfumer proposing a formula based on the brief of a client, but there is another person in the company judging, assessing, making sure that the market trend fits with the proposal, that the client profile fits with the proposal. So to convince our creators to come into this AI-supported creation, we had to mimic kind of in a digital world the same process, converging towards a proposal that matched with the client needs. And of course, at the end of the day, the creators, they make the last validation to make sure that they have, of course, they have a role to play. But this mimicking in trying to have an AI process fitting with what makes the success of them from the beginning was a big change in the acceptance level of the introduction of AI for creation.
Yes, you basically need to get buy-in from everyone.
Exactly.
Igdeep, in terms of example we were given before when we discussed it before, I had like Dogs on Zoom and Fosterverse. So I don't know whether you want to discuss with others or anything else. I'll leave it up to you.
Sure. So I'll so in the COVID period, I mean, so let me step back. The purpose of our company is to make the world a better place for pets. And as a part of that, our goal is to end pet homelessness. So we don't want to see any stray dogs or cats. And so we work a lot with shelter homes for adoption. Now, what happened during the pandemic is the shelter homes were closed because of the COVID pandemic. People were not really traveling outside and they couldn't really adopt. So what we actually did was we actually used Zoom technology, and we actually called it Dogs on Zoom. But basically the idea was that you could actually go and connect shelters with parents, and through Zoom, you could actually look at different pets that you could actually adopt. And through that, we actually paid for adoption fees and actually helped foster or actually encourage a dog adoption or pet adoption through the pandemic. So we actually had close to 70,000 adoptions on that period. And then what we did was we said, listen, this is a pretty interesting idea because a lot of people also want to have adoption of pets or fostering of pets in the metaverse. So we actually came up with, we actually own some of the biggest websites for pet adoption. It's called Adopt-A-Pet. We work with 26,000 shelters in the US. And so a look-alike of an avatar of the pets that were available, and you could actually go and actually adopt or foster that pet. So we actually had more than 726 million media views, and we actually had more than 70,000 people who actually ended up trying this out. So some ideas on how we are actually driving, our relevance of the brands using technology.
Yeah, and I think with all your example, what we're seeing is the breadth of what is digital transformation practically, the complexity of it. Yeah. So it's not just about, I'm company X, I'm going to follow what company Y does, and I'm going to be successful. That doesn't work. We've got a few minutes left. We're going to go soon to Q&A, so if you have any questions, please write them on Slido or put your hands up in a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask a final question. I'm going to start with Raoul, but everybody can answer as well afterwards. Is that obviously we're talking about COVID being an accelerator. We're now in an era where the macro environment is a bit tougher. So what does that mean in terms of digital transformation? Is it more difficult to get investment because people are starting to look at the bottom line and saying, well, actually, and we've seen a lot of tech companies firing a lot of people, letting people go? Or is it just a moment, okay, this is what we need to do, we're going to double down and we're going to do it because we're going to get a competitive advantage? So what's your perspective?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, definitely. I think we are in an environment where we are running into a speed bump, I would say. We kind of were running, very fast execution cycle through the COVID, especially the technology industry, and obviously the digital transformation accelerated along the way. It's a speed bump, I would say. And when you run into a speed bump, you generally change gears, a bit of a lower gear, and prioritize what you're going to focus on and what's more important in the near-term horizon versus a lot longer term. But then, continue on the journey. And I see a lot of opportunity as a result of the macro headwinds as to what can be done. Clearly, I think it's not just the macro environment, it is also the geopolitical situation. And we have to be mindful of some of these aspects in our journey. We just can't ignore them. And the governments have a big role to play. Regulation has a big role to play. Protection of our intellectual properties is a dimension that cannot be ignored. And value creation, at the end of the day, cannot be ignored as well. And so keeping all those in mind, clearly, I think there's the speed bump that we have to navigate. And I'm very confident Qualcomm and many other tech companies are going to find the right way through these times that we are in. And I'm really excited about many things that are ahead of us. We talked about a lot of things in terms of digital transformation. There's this whole automotive industry that's transforming, right? Apparently, the larger initiative is not only about AI, that's the new generation that we are at the cusp of. Is it a generation before AI and now a generation after AI? What does that do to the world of energy consumption? What does that do to how we navigate, how we use our roadways, how we use our transportation on a going forward basis? This is where the opportunity is for companies like Qualcomm. We've already announced in a massive engagement with almost any and every brand name OEM around the world, where we have designs for the entire semiconductor in a car, right from the infotainment panel to automated driving. We've announced over $30 billion of revenue pipeline that we have. And so a lot more to look forward to, and we have to continuously evolve in this new world, and the speed bump is definitely an opportunity to shift gears and move and navigate in the right direction.
There we are. I'm gonna open it up for questions. So we got people at the back, people at the front. We go at the back first, and we go at the front, because nobody usually at the front when the mic is at the back. That's an issue. Okay, let's go at the back first, and then at the front. So at the back, please.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Danella, and I'm from the ITU, the United Nations Agency for Digital Transformation. And I want to ask a question to Rahul, but it would be great if anyone else wants to jump in. And it touches on what you were sharing earlier about those who are unconnected, the 2.7 billion people who don't have any meaningful access to the internet. And I'm just curious, in digital transformation efforts, to what extent for businesses do you think it's important to consider or not these people who are unconnected, and what does that look like in practicality?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. It is core of what I think about on a daily basis. It's not only an opportunity that should be classified as a business opportunity in the near term, but it's an opportunity to make the world a better place. I'll just have everybody reflect on this example. The world before Amazon.com or online shopping, the world after Amazon.com or online shopping. It was a world where we had limited choices. And now we have a world that is a store without any boundaries, without any restrictions, loosely put, but also a world that engages any and every merchant, a vendor from anywhere in the world, gives them an opportunity to transact and do business. So extending the digital transformation to these 2.73 billion fellow planet Earth mates of ours is not only an opportunity for them to engage with us, but it's also a huge opportunity for us to engage with them. And not overlooking the importance of that level of engagement and the benefit it's going to bring to everybody, including ourselves, is just phenomenal opportunity ahead of us that we should probably take into account. There are solutions. Working with, and it's largely a CapEx problem. People are getting left behind because the CapEx expenditures that are needed to extend broadband to some parts of the world are prohibitive from a business dimension point of view. But there's wireless communications. With the wireless broadband, what is also known as fixed wireless access, where you don't need to run wires to the home, and you can provide broadband through wireless communications, is another way to go about engaging and bringing these folks into the world of digital transformation. So I'm really excited about some of these things, But I really believe it's just not Qualcomm and it's not one or two technology companies. It's also the government. It's also everybody else in the ecosystem that has to do a lot more than what we are doing right now to bring these mates of ours from planet Earth into the digital transformation dimension.
We've got 20 seconds, but I promise, so here you go. We'll go over by a few minutes.
With microphones today. Hello, I'm Alex from Citibank. Long question, but I'll try to keep it short. Nadine, you were talking about the recognition of pet breeds to target products, but from my understanding, many people view their pets as children. Do you really think that they would be comfortable with their dogs being scanned? And a general question for the panel, where do you draw the line between privacy and targeted products and services?
Oh, that's a big question for 15 seconds. It's a really good question. I think one of the things we are having like lots of conversations on is kind of should, just because you can, does that mean you should? And I think there's lots of situations where data, we can gather so much data about individuals, about their pets, about their children. It's kind of when do you use that data? And I think there's government guidelines depending on the region you're in, but also then there's ethical guidelines depending on the organisation you work in. And this is something we would discuss very closely with the client, so it wouldn't have been yourself directly, but it would have been definitely someone in Mars Pet Care that would have been a lot of discussions about how we use data. In WPP, I'll try and keep this really short, we've got a data ethics calculator, which allows, this is a great example of digital transformation, it allows our staff to input the kind of data that they've got, the kind of audience they're targeting, and it kind of gives them a bit of a risk analysis on, is this risk high risk? Should you be thinking more about this with your client? And just helps them think a bit wider. So it helps everyone to take that stop and pause. As with many technologies, you need that human layer to really think about how you use data. I could speak longer, but that would be my thoughts on just kind of data and data privacy. I think it's just become more and more important. I think consumers actually moving to wanting more protective of their data, and advertising is moving to more contextual, which is looking at the environment they're advertising in and targeting that way than targeting individual consumers.
I'll just add one thing, if I may.
Very quickly.
Super quick, like 20 seconds. Agree absolutely on the data privacy and what's targeted and what's not. One recommendation I would have is form a AI ethics group, and in that group have philosophers, have data scientists, have legal experts, but bring a small group together to really think about the ethics of AI, because not everything's regulated yet, and it's going to, if we're led to believe where generative AI is headed, it's going to start regulating itself. So we should get on the front foot with that.
Very quickly.
You don't hate me, but 10 seconds.
10.
I think
Okay.
one dimension only that we have not so much evoked is cybersecurity. I think here, from when it comes to data privacy, security, and everything, I think collectively, as an ecosystem, including the regulators and the authorities, I think cybersecurity becomes, we all know, a growing issue and a race. And I think probably we do not do enough collectively and internationally about cybersecurity. That's my word.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We could have gone for far much longer. So thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much to our panel. And sorry for being late.